Hey, this is Tom Waltz, IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle writer, and you have jumped inside the pool bag.
Welcome to The Pull Bag. Join us as we dig out our latest comics and discuss them with a rotating panel of the GCRN crew. So sit back and enjoy this week's Pull Bag.
Hey, Raph! Welcome back, bro! What a hothead. Ow! Ow, 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 ow! Whoa! Raph, we don't have time for this. And why not? Because we're not alone?
Hello and welcome to The Pull Bag. I'm your host, TFJ and Mike, and joining me is Joe Reed. Hello.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thought that I was going to have to put our latest guest in the Never Gonna Happen folder, along with Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, and Mark Hamill. Luckily, this isn't the case, because today we have the pleasure of welcoming for the first time the turtle who writes IDW Publishing's TMNT ongoing. Let's all get our spoons ready to dine on some turtle soup with Mr. Tom Waltz.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Before we get started, give us the scoop on what's going on in the world of Tom Waltz. Any upcoming turtle events you can reveal without Shredder cutting your head off?
Well, I'm actually working right now on issue 55 is what I'm currently writing. We actually did something a little different this time because we've had a bit of a change of art as well. Mateus Sanluco has taken a break after the big issue 50. So what I did was I wrote through issue 54 and then I skipped ahead and wrote issue 56 so we could get Mateus started. And then I kind of circled back to write issue 55. Kevin, Bobby, and I have been working pretty hard to plot things out to 100. Basically, we've already pretty much got the story, at least in a general sense, in some of the arcs specifically plotted to issue 100. So I was able to kind of circle back. 55 will be a standalone, in a sense, a standalone issue. It was one that I could skip and then come back to without being too worried about continuity. Other than that, we are, like I said, really busy plotting out things for the future, working on some of the big storylines and figuring out how we want to break them down as the arcs continue. On the Turtle front, I'm not a part of this, but on the Turtle front, we've got the big Turtles Batman crossover that's coming. I've seen some of the first issue, and it's really cool. The guys over at DC are doing a really good job, and so I'm excited for fans to see that. And really, that's it. I have some stuff going on I can't talk about, but I'm very excited about probably later this year being able to talk about it. At this point, no, I can't say anything.
We'll make him tell us off air, folks, and you just won't hear about it, and we'll already know about it.
So, do you and the IDW folks have any convention appearances coming up? We're kind of at the end of convention season this year, but I just found out that Kevin Eastman's coming to my Grand Rapids Comic-Con in 2016. What about the rest of you guys?
You know what? It's funny. I don't tend to go to a lot of the conventions. They kind of keep me strapped to my desk here. But Kevin's always on the go. And matter of fact, it's funny that you mentioned Grand Rapids because I'm from Michigan. I grew up in Michigan, and I'm always wishing one of the Michigan conventions would invite me. It just never happens. But the company itself stays pretty busy. I'm not sure specifically what they have coming up, but I don't have anything planned myself. Like I said, I tend to sit in front of the word processor and not leave too often.
Awesome. I asked Bobby this on our second interview. If you were stranded on a desert island, what IDW TMNT arc would you want to have with you?
Oh man. You know what? I think that's a tough one. I don't know about an arc itself. I can think of specific issues, I think. If I could have like 4 issues that would kind of make its own little arc. I was really happy with issue 5 when we showed the reincarnation story. That was a big deal for me. I think one of the issues, maybe one of the culminating issue in City Fall, I really like that. In Northampton, wow, that's a tough one. I had a lot of fun writing the Michelangelo issue where he was writing the letter to Woody, and I think maybe for the fourth issue for the arc would be issue 50. But that's tough. There's so many storylines that mean a lot to me for different reasons. I mean, I can sit here and I always tell people sometimes it's the little things that I remember the most. And I remember a scene where Casey is hanging out with Master Splinter and Master Splinter's cooking, and they're just talking. It's like, and little things like that are always the people always laugh at me because we have all these big fights and all this dramatic stuff going on. And just those little moments mean a lot to me. The Turtles playing Twister was one issue. So it would be tough for me. So I think I would have to pick those specific issues. But I would happily take a big long box if I couldn't take them all.
Yeah, I can see when you're picking those moments. These are like, oh yeah, I responded to those too. They're especially those small moments. They're such nice little gems where we really get to know the characters.
Yeah, Bobby always laughs because when a lot of times when I love writing those interpersonal moments more. I think now as I'm older than maybe when you're younger and you're first starting, you're thinking of all the action and the superhero stuff. But it's funny that I think that stuff resonates with me more. Not that I don't like the action, but it's sometimes it's more difficult for me to write the action scenes than it is for me to engage myself with the what I guess we call talking head scenes. But I think it's one of those things where I have the leeway with Bobby and then Nickelodeon, who also critiques the scripts and gives me notes. They always say, "You talk a lot at first. We gotta bring you back." So now they're after 50 some issues, they're used to me. I said, "Let me talk. Let me get out of my system, and then you guys start making cuts, and I'll happily rein myself back in." But it's been a lot of fun, and the nice thing with Turtles especially is it's such a story about family and interpersonal relationships between different groups and different individuals that I get the opportunity to do that.
Well, I think you especially are doing really well making all of these characters come together, making those moments for us. I mean, all of us fans of the Turtles who grew up with them in the late 80s and early 90s, we're all in our 30s now, and those talking head moments, we all of us adults can relate to that more, and it's exactly what I want out of my Ninja Turtles now that I'm approaching middle age.
It's funny when you say that because, of course, one of the questions that we always get, Kevin, Bobby, myself, is who's your favorite turtle? Which is your favorite turtle to write? And my answer is kind of my patented answer now is actually the one I relate to more than anybody else is Splinter at this point. He's a dad, he's got responsibilities, he's got those kind of pressures, and I'm in my mid 40s now, so I absolutely relate to that old rat more than I do those young turtles sometimes.
All I can think when you said that is Mikey from the 90 movie. You dirty rat! You killed my brother! You dirty rat! Oh boy.
So I guess we gotta cover this because it's still, even though it probably was almost a year ago now. How was the fan backlash for the Death of Donatello, the death, finger quotes in the air? How was that received in the office? Do you have any memorable hate mail?
Got some death threats. I actually got a death threat from Singapore that they were gonna come kill me for that, but it was in bad English too, so it made it even funner to read. That came on Twitter, I think. But no, you know what? It was weird because when we were writing that, when we were plotting that out, and then when I was writing it, Bobby and I were really, focused on making sure everything we did worked its way to 50, because 50 was, really important to us. And from the very beginning, when I first started, even before Bobby came on board, I knew that somewhere, and it ended up being issue 50, I wanted to have, the confrontation between Splinter and Shredder, where, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read issue 50, where Splinter and Shredder had that moment where Shredder commits seppuku and using Splinter as his second. And so we were really focused on that for a long time, and we were so so concerned that everything had to fit, and pace itself correctly to get there, that the Donatello moment for us was more like a means to an end. Does that make sense? So it was just like another piece in the puzzle, and we knew it was a big deal, but none of us, I'm sure Bobby will attest to this, Kevin, none of us expected what happened, because the issue that went out to stores, we came in that Wednesday, and all of a sudden I'm being told, USA Today wants to talk to you. And I was like, about what? And then it really hit us how big a deal that was, and then just how widespread, because that news went out to the world. Probably the comic fandom was a small aspect of that news story. It went everywhere, and then it was funny getting emails from people who were mad at me because they just started watching the TV show, and now we killed Donnie. How could we do that? And not realizing one had nothing to do with the other. The TV show and our comic book are two separate things, but it really struck home to us. And I know I can speak for myself personally, how important and how loved these characters are. You know what I mean? And so it really was an eye opener for me. And it's in a way, it's kind of affected how I write or the stuff we plot now, because we do realize that this can have an immediate and massive effect on fandom and people. But for the most part, I think there was a lot of shock, and we got a lot of sad emails, a lot of sad letters. People were upset. But I think for the most part, it was one of those things where people, I think, were impressed that we went down that road. I think there was that initial, cynicism where people say, well, it's comics, and he's not gonna, he'll come back to life. But we always knew that he never really was going to die, per se, that, he was just going to be in Metalhead for a while. But it really was, I think I was probably more shocked by the reactions than how shocked the people were about, the circumstance. It was a pretty bizarre thing. I've never expected that, and I don't know if we could ever have that happen again. Even with what happened with Shredder in issue 50, there was no reaction like we got with the Donnie death.
Well, okay, I'm sure there are plenty of Shredder fans out there, but I mean, this is Donatello. This is one of the Turtles. You just said it yourself. This news went worldwide. I think this is probably the biggest news in comics since the death of Superman at this point.
And the funniest thing was, so, our CEO is Ted Adams, and he have people come to the office, and he's showing the new offices, and they'll always pass by my desk. And now I'm known as, hey, this is our senior staff writer, Tom. He writes the Turtles, and he killed Donatello. And that's how I'm known now. So I always laugh, and I always say, but nobody knows the big picture. I think that was Bobby's idea. So we can blame Bobby, but I get all the blame.
Your name's on the book, man.
Well, after all, what actually led up to us getting this interview, folks, is you and Bobby and Kevin had done an interview with another website recently, like within the last 3 or 4 weeks or something. And one of the questions over there was something about, how has the turtle thing gone on this long? And you had said something to it was my favorite answer I've ever seen in an interview. And you're like, yeah, I don't think Bobby's getting any sleep in like 4 years. It's like, no, he probably hasn't.
No, and you know what? It's amazing because Bobby has to, not only is he editing, but he's co-plotting these stories, but it's not just this ongoing that he's working on. It's just everything Turtles, but also within IDW, he does My Little Pony, Godzilla, and various other books. So, and those are no slouches either, especially My Little Pony. That's a huge book. So he stays busy, and it amazes me because and he was about to kill me when we started writing issue 51 and 52 because he said, you're supposed to slow down on the plot lines, and I can't help myself. So we had all these other new plot lines that are running out of issue 50, but his job is to keep all this stuff organized because we've always usually had these ancillary miniseries going on. Most recently was the Casey and April storyline, and including things like we just did one the Turtles Ghostbuster crossover, and now this Turtle Batman crossover, and then other things. it's a big job, and he's got to keep that all sorted out in his head, because what we've been trying to do from the start is make sure everything counts. So if we're doing a miniseries, there's things that tie in directly to the ongoing always, and including Casey and April. People thought, I heard I really like that series, by the way, and I saw some slack online about it, but flack, but the reality is there was a lot of things that happened in that Casey and April miniseries that are important to what's going to happen in the ongoing. And that's something that is, I'm proud that we do, and I give all credit to Bobby keeping it so that that's possible, because continuity's a bitch. Excuse my French, but it is.
Don't worry, if you need to curse, go ahead. It's okay. You want to get that other one, Joe?
With the following up to that previous question there, what's your opinion in the offices there, and as the writer, of the speculators who jumped on top of that Donatello book and drove the collectability, and the people who actually wanted to read it couldn't get it? Do you guys have opinions on that in the office, or do you just you're too busy birthing the baby?
It's funny because, we love the sales, we love the numbers. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it was a unique opportunity for us, because our numbers jumped at a kind of a weird place in a series for numbers to jump, sales wise, and then and especially unannounced, because a lot of times you'll see like the death of Captain America. Well, you kind of know that's coming. Marvel does a good job of getting the word out. The retailers know, they know when to order. We didn't say anything, and we get a lot of credit that we're geniuses for that, but it wasn't by design. We just, like I said, we literally thought people would be surprised when they read the story. We just didn't know it was going to be what it was. But we were in a unique position, and a fortunate one, where the story I felt was strong enough that, that was a big deal, and we brought in a lot of speculators and maybe some bandwagoners, but damn it, the story was good, and they've stayed on board. You know what I mean? So our numbers went up, but it wasn't like, hey, it was this giant leap for 44, and then this just massive drop to 45. Our numbers kind of leveled out and above and beyond where they were prior to 44, and they've stayed that way. And I feel like 50 was a really strong issue. We had really good numbers there. I just was looking at some numbers on, I think it was Bleeding Cool, and it looks like both 50 and 51 were in the top 100 for October. I want to say September, October, whatever month they were that came out. And so for us, it's it's a boom. Obviously, the sales are great. So in the business sense, we love that stuff. It's kind of like when we print multiple covers. I look at it this way: we'll catch a lot of heat. People say, "Wow, why do you do so many covers? I can't pay for all these covers." But we're thinking we're really not making you buy them. So why would we not do that if there wasn't a market for it? And two, it's employing artists. You know what I mean? That's an opportunity for us. Those sub-variants and those retailer incentive covers and retailer exclusive covers, where we can test out artists that we've been really wanting to work with, but you just never know. You've seen samples and you think, okay, I can test this person out on the cover and see how it goes. And 9 times out of 10, it's a good thing. And so I always kind of feel good about those covers, because we're employing people that might not otherwise get seen, and then gives them an opportunity for future work once they are seen. As far as that's a good question. I always equate it to this. I'm working on issue 55 right now, and I already wrote 56. So technically, I should be at 56. 52 hasn't even hit the stores yet. So it's kind of like we're in this weird time warp. So people are talking about 52. My brain is already at 57. So when 44 came out, I was already 46, probably in my head, probably 47. And so you kind of got to shift gears. That's why I can totally understand now. I remember something about, I think it was Derek Jeter from the Yankees. I'm a big sports fan, and they were asking him about some kind of record that he had going on and how he felt about it. And he said, you know what? He said, someday when I'm done, I'll be able to sit back and think about it. But right now, I'm just too worried about the next at-bat. And that's kind of how it feels in this business. It literally does. I mean, it's what have you done for me lately, or what are you doing today? Yesterday's gone, and so it's one of those things where when 44 hit and all that stuff was happening, it was exciting, but I was freaking out about my next deadline. and Bobby's a taskmaster, trust me, so I was
really I saw recently, I forget when it was maybe a couple weeks ago, where I saw him post on Twitter. He's like, okay, freelancers, get ready, deadline's coming up.
Yeah. I think his Halloween costume, it was like a monster, and he had the big words deadlines on his chest.
That's funny. You mentioned earlier that you grew up in Michigan. Did you ever think you'd be living in California?
It's a funny story, because I grew up in Michigan, a little town called, and I'm still proud to be from there, called Clinton, Michigan, and down in southeastern Michigan in Lenawee County. And as soon as I turned 18, I went to the Marines. So I was in the Marines for 4 years. And the last year I was in the Marines, I was actually in Desert Storm, and when Desert Storm hit, I was actually supposed to go to Okinawa, but I obviously detoured into the desert, and I was there for a year, and I only had like a couple of months left in my enlistment when the war ended. So they just sent me back to Camp Pendleton just to finish out my enlistment. And the entire time I was in the Marine Corps, I knew guys in the Marines that were from Southern California, and I would say, I'm going back to Michigan. I could never live in Southern California. I'm a Michigan guy. I'm going to go back to Michigan. I came to Camp Pendleton, got a few months of San Diego in my system, and I never went back. It's hard to leave it. I mean, and plus my beautiful wife I have now, I met at that time. So, that was a huge incentive for me to stay. But that was in, 1991 when I first came to San Diego. There was a point where I went back to Michigan, maybe a year and a half for a job, and that was 1 winter and a half and too many. And I said, I can't. Once you know the difference, it's hard. So I still love Michigan. My entire family is there. We still love to go back, but I've been in San Diego many, many years now, and it would be hard for me to leave.
What were some comics that you read as a kid? Were you reading comics at all, or?
I did. I mean, my initial exposure, one of my uncles had a Marathon gas station repair place, and he had a lobby. We'd go over there sometimes, and in his lobby he had, greasy copies of, like the kind you would see in a mechanic's shop of, what was it? Golly, what's his name? The rich kid, Richie Rich. And so, and I remember thinking, that kid is the luckiest bastard in the world. I wish I had he had. So, but it was, things like Richie Rich, maybe some of the old Disney stuff. But when I think what really hit me as far as what comics could be, my cousin, she's older than me. She was married, and her husband collected comics, and so he would let us look at them. And this was, the Chris Claremont era. X-Men. He had a lot of that stuff. He was a big Marvel guy, and to this day, because of that, I'm a big Marvel guy too. I like Batman and some stuff at DC, but mostly I tend to read the Marvel stuff when I'm not reading our stuff. And I read the Brood Saga, and it blew my mind. That once I read that, I thought, okay, this is some of the greatest stuff I've ever seen in my life, because I hadn't really been exposed to this idea that beyond, obviously, the mutant powers and all that, there was this underlying drama, almost like, soap opera. If you guys remember the Brood Saga, even Wolverine got pregnant from the Brood monsters, and the Brood monsters freaked me out. They were right up there with the alien monsters, and so I remember that being a big deal for me. Some Daredevil from that time, and then later on, reading obviously the Frank Miller Dark Knight stuff, things like that. But I kind of went away from comics. Like I said, when I was in the Marines, I was pretty busy. I had a job that I was gone a lot, doing a lot of weird things, and just didn't have a lot of time to do any reading like that. I did have a friend, though. Speaking of speculators, I never forget this. I had a friend in the Marines that was a collector. So this is the late 80s when everybody thought they were going to be bazillionaires from their comic book collection. And he every payday, we didn't get paid a lot. The Marines, they still don't get paid a lot. It's a crime how much they get paid. But we would get our paychecks, and on a Friday, on Saturday, we would go off base to a comic book store, and he would buy 2 copies of everything. And the one was to read, and the one was to put in the box to save. And I can never. I'm one of those guys. If it's got words on it and it's supposed to be read, you should be holding it in your hands, reading it. I would never be able to be a collector. Never. Toys, nothing. If it's a toy, I think you should play with it. So I remember thinking he was the craziest guy. But he was the one, ironically, that introduced me to the Turtles for the first time. Because I was talking earlier about how I didn't really, I wasn't in the comics at the time, and that was sort of the heyday of the Mirage stuff. But he would also collect magazines, catalogs for the resin role-playing game toys or figures. And there was a Turtles resin role-playing game, I believe, at the time. So I was looking through this magazine, and a lot of it was Dungeons and Dragons, stuff like that. And there was a page that said, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it showed the different resin figures you could get for the game. And I remember looking at them, and I said, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard of in my life. And he goes, no, I swear, dude, it's cool. It's really cool. And I looked at it, and I said, it does kind of look cool. And that was it for me for Turtles for a while, until later on when I was, with my oldest son watching some of the Fred Wolf stuff. So that was my first experience with Turtles. And I always tell Kevin, the first time I saw your Turtles, I said it was the stupidest thing I had ever seen in my life.
And Kevin says, so did we, dude. So who were some of the writers that you admired kind of as you came into the profession? Who were you looking at for inspiration, and what did you take from them?
Well, first and foremost, I always say, I grew up in Michigan, a small town. The best stories are in the Bible. Most of the most violent ones are in the Bible. So there were some good stories there. The other ones are, I am a writer now because of my 5th grade teacher, and I actually ended up having him in 6th grade too. His name was Mr. Dennis Bowman, and he read The Hobbit to us. And once I heard The Hobbit, and he was just such a great teacher, and he was passionate about it, and just one of those guys people that can just read so well and make it so entertaining. I remember thinking, I want to make people feel the way this story makes me feel. And so that's when I knew I wanted to be a writer. And so at least, my earliest memories from 5th grade, wanting to be a writer. As a matter of fact, when I went into the Marine Corps, I was supposed to go in as a journalist. And right at the very end of boot camp, they let me know that school got closed. And my life took a whole different path after that for a while. But writing is something I've always wanted to do. So, early on it was Tolkien. I liked a lot of Stephen King at some point. I love F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think The Great Gatsby is probably my favorite book. But I read a lot of stuff. Lately I've been really into things like, there's a writer named Mark Booth. Things that, like secret histories. I'm really into kind of this, maybe it's Splinter's influence on me, or Kitsune, I don't know. These like books about sacred histories and histories of religions and history of the world, and everybody calls me the Illuminati freak here at the office because I'm knee deep in every conspiracy. Trust me. And I always tell them they're only conspiracies until they're not. You just stick around long enough. But I'm pretty open-minded. I do like lately. I could say there's a writer that I've just discovered. He's been around for a while, but I've newly discovered him, named John Connolly, who writes a series of mystery books with a private detective named Charlie Parker. And those have been a lot of fun for me. But my little daughter takes after me at this point. If I can get my hands on it, I'll read it. I remember, I think you guys ever see that movie Kingpin with Woody Harrelson? Mm-hmm. I laughed so hard at that scene, and my wife laughs too, that scene where the guy has to go to the bathroom and he needs something to read, and he said, I already read this bottle of shampoo. And I go, that's me right there. If it can be read, I will read it. I will say this. I always want to, there's well-known writers and there's lesser-known writers in this world. When I first started coming into kind of writing, I guess what you call professionally, I worked on an online website that did superhero prose called Cyber Age Adventures. And the guy who ran that, who's also a writer and an excellent writer, his name is Frank Fradella. And, he and I are friends to this day. Frank had a huge influence, I think, on, we were talking earlier about those talking head scenes, how I approach a story, especially something that's kind of, fantasy driven or superhero driven. It was a rule he just like pounded into us when we were writing for that magazine. And we were doing this online free weekly. So we were writing weekly stories. It was weird, you weren't even getting paid, and you had these like crazy deadlines every week, but it was just a great challenge, and I loved it. It was just a great time in my life as a writer. But his thing was that the characters are what's important. Everything is character driven. It's not, if the characters don't drive the story, people can't relate. And I said this in the interview you guys were talking about earlier. Most of us aren't ninjas. Most of us never fight with samurai swords. I can't fly. I got a bad knee. I can barely run. But the thing is that I have siblings, and I have parents, and I have interpersonal relationships that are complicated, and people I love and people I don't love so much and who don't love me. And so those moments always resonate the most. Those are the ones that people can relate to. And so when you approach it that way and remind yourself that the things like the ninja fighting and the I don't know, the arcane ninja magic and all those things, that's just the part of the setting. That's that's like the icing on top. If the other stuff's not working, none of that stuff matters, because if a story was 20 pages of just fighting and that was what you did month after month, that would get boring. It would be boring to write, I think, and then it would be boring to read. And so I think that's been a huge lesson in my life, and something every time I sit down, when I write page one for every script, my thought is, I'm always thinking, don't worry about the fights, they'll work themselves out, worry about the people that you're writing about.
Very cool, and it shows too. Like we said earlier, the fans of the Turtles, I think a lot of the fans who read this book have grown up. We need those scenes, and we need those interpersonal relationships, and it keeps our interest as well.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that question you guys asked about Donnie. I think sometimes maybe there was such a huge impact there because, when Superman died, it was kind of like this huge, almost messianic hero dies, and it was, it's a big deal. But when Donnie dies, it's like your brother died.
Yep.
And I think that's why it hit people so hard.
Absolutely. What I found interesting is, outside of your writing, you're also editing now. You are editing the Back to the Future miniseries for IDW.
Oh, yeah, that's actually been a huge hit for us. I mean, a massive hit. That's been a lot of fun. I think that gig kind of came my way. I've actually been editing. I started at IDW as an editor because I came in to help with the Gene Simmons books way back when, 2006 or 2007, and they just haven't been able to get rid of me since. But the Back to the Future thing kind of, I think, dovetailed out of Ghostbusters. I've been editing Ghostbusters for almost as long as I've been writing Turtles, and probably a little longer. And that's been a really fun, consistent success for us. I've got a team of the writers Eric Burnham, artist Dan Schoening, colorist Luis Antonio Delgado, that I've been working with for years now, and they are the Ghostbusters in my mind. It's such an easy book to edit because they just make it wonderful to work on, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're all a wealth of Ghostbusters knowledge. So I think that kind of influenced the bosses here to kind of push Back to the Future my way. And I was a Back to the Future fan, not a huge fan, but I was a big fan. Again, like the Donnie thing, talk about not expecting what came about. I didn't realize people were that big at Back to the Future fans. Now I am, and now I've been blessed to work with Bob Gale on this. I work with him directly every day. He's very much involved with this. One of the co-creators of Back to the Future, and just kind of through him, especially recently with Back to the Future Day, it really has become apparent to me that there's a massive fan base, a loyal fan base, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I knew it was going to be a cool job, but it's actually turned out to be like Ghostbusters, just this fun thing to be a part of something that people are so passionate about.
That's what happens when you've been thinking fourth dimensionally for 30 years.
I tell you what, it's the hardest thing with. I thought the Ghostbusters wacky science stuff was hard sometimes when I would get proposals from Eric and some of the other Ghostbusters writers. Try reading time travel pitches. Oh my God. I had to step back sometimes and say, I can't even understand what is going on here.
All right, since this is our first time chatting with you, tell us the story of how you came to IDW and eventually got to reincarnate the Turtles.
Here's how I came to IDW. So before IDW, I had a comic book that I was doing on my own with an artist named Casey Maloney, who I still work with. We just finished another creator-owned book called The Last Fall together. It was a book called Children of the Grave, which was a military horror comic, and that was with a small, little kind of vanity company called Shooting Star Comics, and that actually kind of, I got involved with them through my work with Frank Fridella and Sean Taylor at Cyber Age Adventures, the pros website I mentioned earlier. So I had done this comic and really funded it myself through their imprint. They were able to get into Diamond, and we were selling maybe a couple hundred copies of each issue. It was a 4-issue series. But I happened to be, I think it had to be around 2000, I want to say 4 or 5. I was in the comic book store here that I go to in San Diego called Kamikaze, and it was a free comic book day. And Ted Adams was there, and the owner of Kamikaze introduced us. His name is Robert Scott, the owner. And Ted said, "Oh, you write the Children of the Grave comic. I really like that. Would you be interested in us collecting that?" And I couldn't say yes fast enough. So IDW volunteered to collect Children of the Grave, which we did. And through that process, I got to know Chris Ryall, who's the editor-in-chief here and the chief creative officer. Well, as it turns out, one thing Chris and I have in common, we hit it off right away, but a big part of that was we love bad 80s hair metal, big time. So that was just like something we hit it off right away, over talks of comics and Iron Maiden and everything in between. We, became pretty good friends. Well, I was still, thinking about writing comics. IDW, this was, 2007, still a small company at the time. And he texted me one day, or he sent me an email. I can't remember what it was, but he said, "Guess where I'm going?" And I said, "Where?" And he said, "I'm going to Gene Simmons' house." And I was like, "Oh, you lucky bastard, have fun." And he said, "No, I'm telling you because this will be important to you later." So basically what happened was they wanted to talk, at the time, IDW wanted to talk to Kiss about doing Kiss comics. And the rights weren't available. I think they were with Platinum or somebody at the time. But Gene Simmons said, I'd like to do some comics. I had this Simmons Comics Group imprint I'd like to bring to IDW. And so IDW agreed. Long story short, I was working in the defense industry at the time, and but I was still writing on the side, doing that stuff on my own. And and Chris called me and said, "Look, we have a small staff here at IDW, which seems weird now because now we're 50 plus, but at the time they were like, it was a skeleton crew." And he said, "We'd like you to freelance edit these books for us with Gene." And he said, and also, if you want to write one of them, you could write one. And I jumped at it. I thought, hey, this is a way to kind of get into the business a little bit more official and learn a new skill, which was comic book editing. I had done editing. This would be kind of new for me. But it was actually very exciting. So luckily, with my job in defense, I worked in computers. I had as long as my system was running and I could monitor the systems, I had a lot of time to actually go to the IDW offices because I could work remotely. And so I got to know the people at the IDW offices. And it's funny, we were looking at the conference room I'm sitting in right now, which is like an echo chamber because it's so big. But this conference room is almost as big as our offices were at IDW when I first started. So wow. The growth has been phenomenal. And so I was working with them on the Gene Simmons book. I worked closely with Gene Simmons and Chris, doing it kind of part-time. And what happened was the defense company I was working for decided that it was cheaper to do business in Florida than it was in California. And so they were leaving, and I was going to be out of a job, or at least a full-time job. And Ted Adams said, "We'd like to bring you on full-time. If you're willing, you've been working with us, it was almost like a year, almost 2 years doing that. And they said, come on board. And I jumped at the opportunity. It was, like, again, one of those blessings that I don't know if I deserved it or not, but I'm forever grateful that it came along. And Ted's been great to me ever since I started working at this company, all the way back to that first day at Kamikaze when I met him. And so I came in full time, and then from there, this is the funniest story of all. So before I even knew Chris Ryle, before I even knew anybody at IDW, and I was doing the Children of the Grave comic, I got an interview on some online website, and one of the interviewers asked me, what would you like to write? And I said, I wish I could get a hold of that guy Chris Ryle at IDW, because I want to write a Silent Hill comic, because they have the Silent Hill license. Well, sometimes they ask for it. So once I started working full time, they decided they wanted to do some more Silent Hill stuff. And in a meeting, Ted said, "Does anybody know anybody who would be interested in writing Silent Hill?" Like a kid in the classroom, I raised my hand in the middle of this meeting and said, "I would like to write Silent Hill." And so that was absolute serendipity at its finest. And so since then, I've written four Silent Hill comics, and actually worked on the most recent video game, the Downpour. So I actually, Konami hired me through IDW to write the video game. So it's just funny how it works out. You never know, but it just, sometimes I guess you do throw it out to the universe and it comes back to you if you really want it bad enough. I don't know how to explain it, but looking back at it now, it's bizarre. But again, as things are happening, you just kind of just ride the wave. And there's one minute you're playing Silent Hill with your brother-in-law in the middle of the night saying, "Oh, I would love to write one of these stories." The next thing you know, you've written one of the video games. So it just it's weird how it works out. But I'll forever be, like I said, grateful for everybody here for giving me the opportunities and allowing me the chance to prove myself. And then that kind of paid off with the Turtles, because once we got the license, we were actually trying out other writers. And this is before we knew Kevin would be on board. And I wasn't really involved at the time. And Bobby really wasn't either, because he was more of an assistant editor, new guy at the time. And Scott Newbeer was going to edit the Turtles, because he had a relationship with the folks at Nickelodeon. And we really didn't know what we wanted to do. And I was more kind of the fan in the room, you know what I mean? We had these editorial meetings, and I knew I liked Turtles, and I thought it was a really cool thing, but I just thought, hey, we're going to bring in some fun writers. This is going to be exciting to have this book at the company. I was busy with some other stuff. And then in a meeting one day, Ted said he had been talking to Kevin, and that Kevin had expressed an interest in getting involved, and now, all that's history. We know what's happened now, all of us. But at that point, it was a surprise. And he said, Kevin actually would like to be involved with plotting and artwork, or however we'll have him. So he thought, this would be a good chance to get some new Kevin stories. He said, but he doesn't want to write them. He just wants to kind of be part of, whatever brain meld, the editorial has when we're plotting the stories out. And that's when Chris turned to me in the meeting and said, "Tom, you love Turtles. Why don't you write it? Would you?" And I, again, just like with Silent Hill, I said, yes, I would. And that's how it started. So we had, like I said, we had other proposals that, for whatever reason, I thought, a lot of them were really neat and they were interesting, but just it wasn't what Nickelodeon was looking for, so they were kicking them back. And then I knew I had this idea about the reincarnation. That was the thing that was in my head. I just didn't want to, I didn't want to throw it out and influence anybody or, step on any toes with my ideas. So it was my chance I had to leave that meeting, literally go to my desk, because they said, "We need a proposal tomorrow." And so I thought, oh, great. Sometimes when you do ask for things and you get them, it's a little horrifying. So I had to hurry to my desk. I sat down, I worked all night. And so with that nugget of an idea that the Turtles were actually humans at one point that were reincarnated, I put together the initial proposal. We all sat down, we sent it to Nickelodeon, they liked it, we whittled it down to what it became, and the rest is history. And like I said, 56 issues later, it's still going strong, but I'm just a spoke in that wheel, man. There's so many people that make this what it is. That I like I said, I'm happy and grateful to be a part of it in any way. And fortunately for me, I get my name on the books, but those books don't happen with just my name. There's too many people involved, and like I said, it all starts with Bobby. I think he is the unsung hero in all of this, and it makes me feel bad sometimes because I'll get a lot of credit for things, and I'll step back and say, this is comics, and probably what drew me to comics is the same thing that drew me to the military and sports when I was growing up. This is only as good as the team. And I like working on a team. It's a lot of fun. It's challenging. It's exciting. And I'm a fan too. So sometimes it's cool to be a fanboy in those meetings, especially when you got a rock star like Kevin sitting next to you, who who is probably the nicest. That was the most terrifying part for me when they said, do you want to write it? And then they gave me the job, or they gave me the chance. I was thinking, who am I to tell this guy, this is how our story is going to go, the guy who invented these things. And I mean, I love Kevin. We call each other brothers from another mother. He is the nicest guy, genuinely nicest guy you can meet in this business. Genuinely.
You've miraculously, you have like knocked out our next three questions that I have, which is perfect. I met Kevin Eastman at a convention a couple years ago. There is this weird kind of genuine, he's excited that you're excited for him. And so that is, I can totally jive with that.
Yeah, his energy is infectious. There's no doubt about it.
And the reincarnation idea, that is the single most, I think, incredible and wonderful contribution that you've brought to the world of Turtles. Jen, and then going off of what you said, you have assembled this perfect team, this wonderful storm of brains making a great book. And it sounds like you feel that and you know that, and I'm glad for your enthusiasm, because I don't want you guys to stop.
Oh yeah, it's like, and it's just such a huge advantage to have so much history before, and to be able to kind of dig into that lore. And we always call it cherry picking, finding things that are exciting that happened in the Turtle in the past, and then just bring them into our stories. And I really like that. One of the things that we've been really disciplined about, it'd be so easy to bring so many characters in, and we've already got a lot, but there's so many more out there you could bring in. But we do a really good job, I think, of trying to make it count. So, like with Leatherhead, for example, we could have brought Leatherhead in early on, but the way we're bringing Leatherhead, I think, is most effective. And that was by waiting until it mattered, and we got some other things out of the way. But yeah, and just having a wealth of talent around you. A lot. I mean, I had the reincarnation idea, but that thing really became, to me, solid gold after Mateus and Eric Burnham worked on Secret History of the Foot Clan. That came out of a proposal from Mateus that he and Eric kind of developed together, and I mean, that thing was huge. That thing, when I read it, I thought, man, my idea might have been, like I said, was a nugget. He turned it into gold, and it was exciting for me because I thought, wow, that maybe I was onto something there, because it was more exciting for me not to watch somebody else develop it than me develop myself, if that makes sense. Because then it felt like, okay, it does have some legs, and this proves it. And so, so from there, I just started running with it from, the storyline that they built.
And with all these different heads coming up with these different ideas, and with that reincarnation thing, you've also continually done this wonderful job making us care about each of those characters. In that reincarnation issue 5, I think it was issue 4. Yeah,
Flashback.
Yep, the death of the Turtles, Shredder having the Turtles executed, and watching Saki freak out when that issue hit, and I read that. My son is a newborn, and for the first time in my life, I related to Splinter. And since that book has gone on, I've had a chance to relate to everybody. Is it a challenge, or how do you pace yourself for needing to focus on all these different characters? It seems to be your strength and your team's strength, but do you want to talk on that for a minute?
Yeah, that's probably that is the biggest challenge. And I think that's, again, like I said, having somebody who can coordinate it like Bobby and who has kind of his view on the big picture, it really helps a lot because, it's one of those things where, in a sense, it's a team book too, like kind of like an X-Men or Avengers. You want everybody to get some face time, but it's tough. And I think one of the ways we've kind of gotten around it is everybody gets their moments. We try to make sure that every conversation counts, that there's no wasted space because we're just moving at light speed, but that each kind of story arc, and I'm not just talking about 4 issues, but I'm talking kind of like the big storylines revolves around ultimately one of the turtles. So we started with Raphael being lost and then rejoining the family. It moved to Leo and the whole Dark Leo saga with City Fall, and then to Donatello with everything that happened there leading up to issue 50. And now now we have a chance to really focus on Mikey. Luckily, people have stuck around, and we're still writing, 50 issues in. It might not have worked out if the book got canceled after 12, but it's one of those things where we want everybody to have their time, everybody to have their big moments and their small moments, but also not losing sight of the fact that it's a comic book. That's one thing with Nickelodeon, and I'm glad they do that. Every once in a while they'll say, don't forget, this is a comic book. It can't always be a soap opera. We need to see some swords flying and throwing stars, getting flung across the room, and they're right. But they've also been really supportive of Bobby and I saying, you know what, we had 2 issues that were full of action. We'd like to have 2 issues that are a little quieter. A little more introspective and a little more interpersonal, and they've been really, really nice about allowing us to do that. And as it's turned out, and fans have picked up on this, reviewers, we've kind of found that rhythm, and I think that's been the big key is, big action sets, then the quieter issues, followed by, big action sets. So it always feels like there's always kind of like this underlying drama that's always taking place, build up, and then boom, and then back to the build up, which includes the drama and interpersonal moments. But yeah, that's the biggest challenge. I mean, it's a big challenge, page to page, panel to panel, issue to issue, arc to arc. And again, it takes a lot of people in a room, sometimes arguing to get it where it is.
I remember it's just been... It's almost been about 2 full years since Joe and I have reviewed on here inside the Pullbag. We've done audio reviews on everything up until 46. We still have to record our I don't know, 47. We still have to record 47 to 49 and then our issue 50 episode. But I remember the first thing 2 years ago when Joe was like, "You really need to check this out. Come on, let's do this, whatever." As soon as I opened the first, because I had it in trade at first, so I opened the first trade, I'm like, because I come from 1987, I come from them having 4 different color bandanas, and as soon as I opened it and I'm like, oh, they all have red bandanas, no, come on, give me a break. And then Joe is like, don't worry about it, it's gonna work out, it's gonna make sense, it's gonna be awesome. I was like, all right. And I've just been hooked ever since. Now, we already talked about 44. Let's talk about 50 for a second, because I was on board once I realized that Donnie wasn't exactly dead. I think the action in 44 of how Rocksteady quote-unquote kills him is really what obviously made everyone be like, oh, nope, he's dead. And then everybody started speculating on, oh, what if he's going to be put in Metalhead, or what if he's going to do this, what if he's going to do that? And once he was put in Metalhead, I was fine. I was like, all right, that's cool, whatever. And then 50 comes along. And you ostensibly, basically, kill a character and revive a character in one fell swoop. Because you have Metalhead going self-destruct, and then all of a sudden, on the next panel, it's like Donnie with the bow staff whacking Rocksteady. He's like, man, I've been waiting a while to do that. It just, as soon as I saw Donnie's face, it just made me tear up all over again. How dare you make us cry?
Well, and one of the things that we're going to be working with on the arc that we're writing right now, starting with issue 56, we're going to have the Leatherhead storyline, and we're going to find out more about kind of what happened off screen there when Metalhead blew up and Donnie appeared. So, and Leatherhead is a big part of that. And so, but yeah, that was one of those things. I was excited to get Donnie back in the fold, and I think Mateus was too, because he said he hates drawing the robots. So, so it was one of those things where we were really excited about that. In retrospect, I wish we had 48 pages. If we would have had 58 pages, maybe there'd be a little more fun on there. But we had to keep things rolling. But all credit to Mateus. I didn't know how he was going to pull that off, because when I wrote the script and I was looking at it, I was like, gosh, that happens really fast, but he just made it work, and the big part of that was just how well he did the self-destruct sequence with Metalhead. And some people told me they were ready, before they turned the page, they were ready to kill me again, because they thought, you're killing Donnie a second time.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But no, so that really worked out well, and that I'm really happy with that issue. That's one that there was just so much going on. Even have it be double sized, it just felt like it was packed full of moments and important scenes. And Corey and Mateus and Rhonda. Rhonda's our superstar. Rhonda Pattison, who's our colorist, has been there from the start. So she just keeps us, like Bobby. Bobby keeps the stories cohesive. She keeps the art cohesive. And when I was done with 50, I can honestly say it was a sigh of relief, because I was very happy with it, and I was really nervous going into it. I mean, extremely nervous. About as nervous as I was going back into issue 5, which was actually 5 was the reincarnation issue, and that was one I remember being really nervous about. The other issue that was a tough one was the Leonardo brainwashing issue. We did many drafts. That one had probably the most drafts of any issue we ever did during City Fall. So I thought 50 was going to end up being like that, but it actually went smoother than I thought. And then when the art started coming in, I was just ecstatic.
Very, very cool. We're going to step behind the scenes at IDW for a minute. I recently learned that some branch of IDW is working on a TMNT board game that's supposed to be very story-based. Have you had a chance to play it? Are you in on that? And how much of the board game is coming directly from the IDW comics?
I haven't. They're still developing it, and we're actually, Bobby and I every day look at some of the like the molds for the little characters that will be part of the game, and the cards and the artwork. But it's actually 100% directly from our comics. So it'll be, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what it is, but it will be a storyline from our comics. And then they'll expand from there. But it will follow IDW storylines and characters.
I'm pretty excited for that. The world of board gaming is new to me, but I fully intend on being the guy who brings that game to area conventions and demos it for people, because I love the series, and I think I understand how that game's going to be played. I think I can compare it to things that I have played, and I'm kind of excited to kind of DM that for people. I think it'll be a good experience, and it'll get them a window into the IDW comics, and I can say, that's a good book, you should go read it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's weird. There's a couple of board games going on right now that we're gonna have the Back to the Future board game is another one we're doing, and then one we didn't do but I'm excited about is the Ghostbusters board game from Cryptozoic, because that's based on our Ghostbusters comics, and Dan Schoening and Eric Burnham were very involved with the creation of that game. They're part of the Kickstarter, and then once the Kickstarter went through, like big time it went through, they were brought in to write backstory and design a lot of the artwork for the game. So it's neat, and it's funny because I'm the guy that with the board games, I'm the guy that just makes the little characters fight each other on the table. Because I don't understand the dice or any of this. Obviously, I'm just a dumb Marine. Because there's a huge gaming group here at IDW, and they play every week, and I'll watch them, and they look at me, and I know they're thinking, you don't get it, Tom. Never mind. But I say, I go, but the characters look cool. I like the cards. I start rolling dice, and I'll say, I don't understand. It's too much math.
It seems like you'd be a good DM as a storyteller. You'd be good behind the DM screen, making everybody else.
Yeah, I think I'll have to find my spot. Yeah, I remember my daughter loves Pokemon, and I remember at Comic-Con one time, and she was small, so there was going to be no way she was going to get it, but she asked one of the people that were there demoing Pokemon to show her how to play, and he kind of, had this look like, okay, and he was very patient, very nice, trying to show her. He knew she wouldn't get it. Little did he know, I had no clue what he was talking about either.
Now I'm looking at 50 right now, and just the whole section. It's veterinarian, stupid. No freaking way, man. That felt good. As soon as I saw the no freaking way from the other three, I'm like, okay, yeah, Donnie's back. What did you just do to me? Oh my god! And then Mikey has to come in with the comedy. Whoa, kettle drum.
That was the biggest challenge in that issue, and we kind of stole from the old video games and some of the old stories with Bebop and Rocksteady, was we kind of had painted ourselves into a corner. We loved the Bebop and Rocksteady that kind of evolved in our book, but then we realized, how do you beat these guys? Especially in something like the Gauntlet, and so I told Bobby, I said, I'm going to have them beat each other up. It's the only thing that would make sense. And so that's where Mateus was a genius in that book. He turned that into a great fight with comedic elements, but it's still like probably the most violent part of the Gauntlet fight, other than Leo slashing Koya's wings, which was Bobby's idea. So Bobby's the sadistic one. But what happened was we put that scene together, and then I wanted to kind of have the little cherry on top. So we talked about, obviously Donnie was going to need a new shell. So I thought, why can't the shell be, there's something that's, really, really hard, and then let's just do it with the bow staff. So it made sense that when he came back, these two guys that even when the robot blew up, they didn't get knocked out. He knew where to, hit them. It's not in the comic, but in the script, he hits the nerve points on their necks with that bow staff. And it's some kind of metal bow staff now that ends up, doing the trick and knocking out the two people that he probably most wanted to knock out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You mentioned earlier, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but I want to get this out before we have to let you go. You mentioned earlier that each kind of arc so far has been, the first arc was Raph's, second arc kind of was Leo's, and then now we're just wrapping up on Donnie's whole arc. And I had asked Bobby in the last interview we did, I said, it seems like Mikey is the only one that just doesn't have anything bad happen to him. He's always the one that's, the easy going, upbeat kind of guy, and Bobby's like, just wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's going to go through the ringer. And it's actually as soon as issue 50, 51, 52, 53 really is where it really starts to affect it. 51 and 52, we kind of deal with some of the stuff, mostly about the turtles being new to the foot. And then 53 and 54 are big Mutanimals issues. And, Mikey's kind of got this desire to be a hero, and he's got a friend in Slash who kind of buys into that whole thing, but they're working for Old Hob, and we like to keep Old Hob ambiguous and mysterious. We've already seen that he's rescued Hun from the police, and so that's going to be one of those things that kind of comes around to affect the storyline. But Mikey's going to go through the ringer, and he's going to have to grow up a little bit, but he'll never lose his good-natured personality,
his youthful exuberance,
exuberance, and his eternal optimism. But I think it's going to be a little more tempered now, and I think it's kind of like it's one of those things where what you're going to see in this arc. I was telling another interviewer, we're dealing with this idea that, obviously power corrupts, and even power with the best intentions sometimes, in this case, maybe Splinter with the foot, isn't always wielded easily, nor is freedom sometimes. And Mikey's on his own, and he's able to do these things he thinks that he's always wanted to do, and they're not always what they seem like on the surface. So he's going to find out, I think, the hard way in a lot of cases that compromise is okay. You know, that being away from your family for any reason, you know, in this case, his desire not to be part of the foot isn't always the best decision. It still could be detrimental stepping away from that. And it's going to be fun because it's tough with Mikey because he is such a nice guy. I almost feel bad sometimes when we do it to him. You know, with Raph, you're like,
he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, when it's Raph, you're like, Raph, he probably deserved it. But with Mikey, it's tough because he's such a nice guy.
Yeah, I was heartbroken the whole thing with him and Woody. That was just, I didn't cry, but it just kind of just I don't know. It's like my heart sank into my stomach for Mikey at that point. And then the one thing, and I'm kind of glad you're here so I can say this to you, and maybe it'll happen at some point. Ever since Alopex was introduced, and she and Raph have this really, really weird honeymooners type relationship, I really want to see a Alopex and Raph miniseries or some weird thing, because like, wow, those two.
A lot of people ask about that. They also ask about a Nobody Alopex miniseries. We're going to see. Actually, Alopex is going to be a big part of things that are coming up because, you know, as even like in issue 51, people saw, you know, Kitsune's messing with her head a little bit, and Angel as Nobody will play a big role. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the things that are happening to Casey, and not necessarily good things, kind of roll out of the Casey and April miniseries. You know, and in that miniseries, we saw Rat King again, and one of the other Pantheon members named Akka, and all that stuff. Like I said, if people ignore that miniseries, it doesn't mean they can't read the ongoing, but I always suggest go look at that miniseries because those stories count.
Yeah, I'm one of the ones that wasn't too thrilled with Casey and April. I don't know. It just felt like nothing happened to me in that. I don't know. Maybe I missed the point of it. I'm not sure.
A lot happened, but a lot happened. Like I said, that not just specific to that miniseries, but I think that'll overlap into the ongoing.
I have a feeling in 12 issues, a lot of what happened in that issue is going to nail us hard, and we're going to look back on that and go, oh my gosh, all these seeds got planted, and now they're growing all over. Well, IDW seems to be the company that's known for taking these old 80s properties that we 30-somethings and early 40-somethings love and make magic with them. What does that come from? How did you guys become that company?
I think we found the magic potion, and what that is we don't worry about, how do I say this? We know that there's Back to the Future fans, and we know there's Ghostbusters fans, and we know there's Turtles fans, and we know that initially, to get people on board, we just need to say we're doing a Ghostbusters comic. A number one is going to sell. You know, retailers will take a chance. People will climb on board. Just, you know, to be there at number one. Number two is the tough one, because then we have to give them something that will bring them back. I don't care how much they love Ghostbusters or Turtles or any of these properties. If the story stinks or they can't relate to it, then they're just going to bolt. You know, they're not going to spend their money on it, and they're going to be, you know, grousing, understandably so, that the product wasn't what they wanted. What we do then is we find the creative teams that care about it, that are passionate about it. They don't got to be an A-lister. They don't. I mean, Eric Burnham and Dan Schoening and Luis are pretty well known in the comic book world now. Nobody knew who they were when I brought them into Ghostbusters, but I knew they were going to make good Ghostbusters stories, and that's where I give all credit to Ted and Greg Goldstein, our president, and Chris Ryle. They trust the editors here. You know, it's easy to say, hey, we want a name on this. You know, it'd be great if you could get like a Brian K. Vaughan on one of these books or something like that, because that name sells. But ultimately, when it comes to the licensed books, it's the license that matters. It's the stories and the characters, and we need people who will come in and make it feel like you're reading a Ghostbusters movie in a comic book form. You know what I mean? And that's what those guys did. And I think that's the formula that we've kind of really nailed and have been I always say the bosses are courageous enough here to allow the editors that leeway to say, I have this artist, nobody knows who they are, but I promise you they're going to make a great Jim story or a great, I don't know, Godzilla story or whatever. And then our bosses say, you know what, go for it. And when we do, it works out. Most of the time it works out. I've worked on some books that we've had name creators on that you could tell it was, you know, it wasn't a bad comic, it wasn't a bad book, but it wasn't that wasn't why they were doing it. It was a gig, you know, and it wasn't something they were passionate about. It was, they were hired for their name, got maybe like, here's the wiki information for this character or this property. Can you write us a 4-issue comic series? And they do it, and it's professional, and it's fine enough, you know, as far as the entertaining story is concerned, but it just doesn't strike those chords that need to be struck. And I think that's the key here is, you know, our editorial staff has that ability to take chances with unknowns. And like I said, take chances with unknown creators on a known property, but doing that known property the way it's known, you know.
Yeah,
and
by golly, that's risky. Yeah, but it's worked out.
It is, you know, and it's one of those things where I think what's happened too, you know, Gene Simmons is somebody that I worked with a lot, and I respect Gene a lot. I mean, I never met a guy that works harder than him. And one of the things he always said to Chris Ryland and I is he said, you know what, I bust my ass for many years, and now I have a lot of sweat equity. And meaning, you know, I don't need to give money for things anymore. My name is enough because I've proven, you know, I'll do what I say. And so I think what's happened is IDW to a certain extent has gotten that sweat equity over the years. And so because we've proven we can do these books, people are willing, you know, the retailers are willing to jump on board for, say, for example, for Back to the Future. And you know, it's just up to us to keep doing what we've been doing.
Now, piggybacking off of that question, I kind of feel bad because I read about all of the licensed IDW books because they're amazing. Ghostbusters is great. Don't do the My Little Pony, but that's okay. It's not my thing. But what are some of the IDW verse books that aren't properties that we should all be reading and we're just too chicken to take a chance on something? And forgive me, I'm going to be typing these down as you go through these.
Oh man, there's so many. You know what? The sad truth is there's so many. I couldn't even name them all. We have so many. I think we're doing up to 90 books a month at this point. And we're, you know, so it's a lot of books. Plus, you know, we work with Top Shelf now. I would definitely say like things like Zombies versus Robots. Gosh, I can think. We just did one. Chris wrote String Divers. Winona Earp's getting ready to take off again. Plus, we have the TV show that ties into that. Brooklyn Animal Control. I just did a creator-owned book that I'd love people to go read called The Last Fall. Geez, there's a ton. What I would say, actually, what I would tell people to do is go to our website. Our website, IDWpublishing.com, is great. We've got a great web team here. They've really brought that thing into the modern age, and it's really easy to navigate, and there's a lot of good information out there. Just, you know, if you go on our site, what you'll see is we've got something for everybody. I mean, we've got all ages books, all the way to, you know, terrifying horror books like Silent Hill, for example, and everything in between. You know, we work with Steve Niles a lot. We've got 30 Days of Night. Obviously, you know, the licensed book, Transformers, My Little Pony, Turtles, etc. But I think the best thing is there's just so many books and so many choices that I would say go onto our website and just browse around, and you'll probably find something in some genre or some niche that appeals to you. And all these books are done professionally. There's not one book I can think of that we do that I wouldn't put in front of somebody and say, go for it, you're going to like this.
Absolutely.
And the Top Shelf stuff, like I said, we've just Top Shelf joined us a little while back, and man, they got some cool books. You know, one book that's just gorgeous, absolutely freaking gorgeous, is Troy Little's adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the Hunter S. Thompson classic. That book, we actually did a signing here the other day. We did one first for the IDW staff, and then they did another one over at our art gallery here at the offices. And that was a kind of a passion project for Ted Adams, our CEO, and we brought Troy Little in to adapt it, and it's bonkers cool. Yeah, it's an adult book, without a doubt. There's a few drug references in there, but man, I had seen it, and I had seen it in progress, and then we had the signing the other night, and I got my copy, and Troy signed a copy for all of us, and I was blown away looking at it. Finally, getting to really sit down and look at it. That guy's gonna be a superstar.
Awesome.
Lots to spend money on. Thank you very much.
And then, of course, our artist editions. Can't say enough
I
about
love those books.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about, the whole multiple covers, giving artists, a chance at a job and whatever else. And Joe, when it comes to the TMNT, Joe is one of those collectors. When I told him there was 14 different covers for issue 50 or whatever it is, he's like, how am I going to track all those down?
I can't go for the convention covers because, I'm not driving, across country to get them. But I did manage to get all the covers I wanted, including the Jack Kirby, Kevin Eastman inked cover. Once I got that, that's good. That's all I need. I'm good.
You should see how many we had did you see how many we had for Back to the Future?
34.
Oh, man. I got the show cover, that's the one that I wanted because I love that dude's art.
I told everybody, I said, if I don't write Turtles past 55, it's because Back to the Future killed me. That was a lot of covers.
Yeah, it was. All right. Would you like to inform the fans of where they can interact with you online, sir?
You know what? I'm on Facebook. Just search for my name. I'll be the guy that looks like Splinter with a baseball hat. And then I'm on Twitter at Tom Waltz, and that's generally the two places where you find me most. Other than that, as for the Turtles, there's a forum called the Technodrome Forums. Bobby and I jump on there every once in a while, but mainly Twitter and Facebook, and then I do some stuff here, through IDW itself.
Cool. All right. Before we let you go, remind the listeners of what you have coming up. I know issue 52 is coming this month.
Issue 52 will be the next issue that's coming out. That's coming out this month, probably toward the end of the month. Then I have actually the day after tomorrow on Wednesday, the last fall number 5, which is the 5th issue of 5 in that first volume of that series. That's my it's a military kind of a sci-fi military drama with a little bit of conspiracy in there. I told you guys I'm the conspiracy guy. So there's some conspiracy in there, and that's with my longtime creative partner, Casey Maloney. He's the artist. Then like I said, I will just say I've just finished writing a video game that I'm not sure when that comes out, and I can't say anything else about it, but I'm really excited about that. So first chance I can, probably on one of my social networks, I'll announce it. But I think fans are going to dig that. And then, gosh, I don't know. I don't have any other writing going on other than kind of some stuff I do here as the staff writer for special projects. But Turtles is, in high gear. As far as editing is concerned, Back to the Future is in full swing right now. Really excited about that. And this is going to be a huge Ghostbusters year. We've got an annual that's coming out that's just chock full of fun stuff. We just did a real Ghostbusters crossover, little mini series, and that trade is coming out. And then that jumps right into our 3rd volume of the ongoing series that we've done here at IDW. That's going to be called Ghostbusters International. You're going to see the Ghostbusters all over the world. And then I will say this, all of that kind of ties into something that I think people are underestimating, and I'm going to say it right here, right now. The Ghostbusters movie is going to be huge. It's one of the best movie scripts I've ever read. It's hilarious. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be a monster, and then I'm hoping that kind of expands our Ghostbusters reach as the year progresses. So any doubters out there, trust me, I've read 2 or 3 versions of the script as it's evolved, and it only gets better every time I read it. It's really, spitting my coffee out funny in some parts.
I've had this feeling that movie is going to surprise people. Like,
all you people. It's a Ghostbusters movie. Because people are like, it's not. It's a Ghostbusters movie. Trust me, it's a Ghostbusters movie. It has all those elements. But what I like about it, I think what really makes me warm to it is that what they do in the movie is explain things kind of like we try to do with the Turtles and their masks. That was a big deal for me. The Turtles going to the colored masks. It's funny you mentioned that. That was something that I felt like there's just no way getting around that. Yeah, I know there were the hardcore fans, and we caught a lot of flack for not keeping them in the red mask. But really, things evolved, and the Turtles evolved over the years, and the majority of people know them as the Turtles with the 4 different colored masks. But I just didn't want to throw it out there. I wanted it to at least have a story behind it, or some kind of a meaning behind it. And the same with the reincarnation aspect. Well, in this Ghostbusters movie, Paul Feig does a lot of that. So I mean, we'll know why the No Ghost logo is the way the No Ghost logo is, to why they wear overalls. All of that stuff gets explained, has a practical explanation that also is funny.
Awesome. Very cool. We'd like to thank Mr. Waltz for taking this time to chat with us here in this latest interview here inside the Pull Bag on the GeekCast Radio Network.
Follow me, my sons.
Hit! Cowabunga! Oh, not funny, Raph!
Oh, yes it is.
All right, folks, that's it. That was our interview with Tom Waltz, the head turtle writer at IDW Publishing. That was so cool.
That was a great interview. He basically, I don't know, did you send him a copy of the script? Because he just hit every one of my questions before I got to ask it. It was perfect.
No, I didn't send him a copy of the script at all. What I told him was, we've got some life questions about you, we've got some hard-hitting turtle questions, we've got some other behind-the-scenes stuff, but I didn't actually send him the actual questions at all. But yeah, I'm like, the whole time, and people sometimes don't realize this, when we're doing the podcast interviews, folks, whoever like if it's me and Joe, or if it's me and Steve, and me and whoever else, I'm constantly on mute when the guest is giving their answers, and I'm like, okay, he already answered this, skip to that. He already answered this. It's like those things like, wow, no, that dude was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Waltz, oh man. And coming up for Turtles, oh God, it's going to be so cool, folks. If you're not reading Turtles right now, you need to read Turtles from IDW.
And they have done a fantastic job of keeping up a really good set of trade paperbacks and collections with the miniseries woven in, with the miniseries not woven in. So there's really no excuse to kind of avoid it or not catch up. I don't even think if you have to start from the Free Comic Book Day issue, you can start there. But it's really just too easy to get everything, and it moves so fast. Yeah. 50 issues in a Spider-Man comic covers years. This really is a compressed story that you just get a lot of that character development, and it's all thanks to Tom and Bobby and everybody who are just brain babies over there, just spewing these beautiful ideas and character moments.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to bring up one thing since you mentioned the collections. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the IDW Collection Volume 1, the TMNT ongoing. It's a hardcover. It is out now. It is on Amazon for $29.45.
That's cheap.
It collects, I'm trying to see here, it collects, let's see, where is it? It collects the first 12 issues of the ongoing, plus the Raph, Mikey, Donnie, Leo, and Splinter Micro Series one-shots spliced in between, so they are in. If you get the hardcovers, folks, it's in story order. The next one, actually, TMNT, the IDW Collection Volume 2 hardcover, comes out in February 18th, according to Amazon, of 2016. This one has the issues 13 to 20 of the ongoing, plus Casey, April, Fugitoid, Krang, and Baxter micro series. And it also has Secret History of the Foot Clan in it. That price, according to the pre-order price, is on Amazon $33.12.
Oh my gosh, that's a steal.
I know, right?
I bought the first hardcover at the last con I was at in Grand Rapids, and I think, those are great series, great books.
Yep. So coming up here in the pull bag, folks, in the next couple of weeks, hopefully Joe and I can get to the 2 episodes we've been meaning to record.
I'm sorry, I'm moving to a new house.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. One episode, as I already said, is going to be 47 to 49, which is leading up to 50, and then we're just going to do one episode for 50 itself. And then after that, how we're going to do it is, as Tom mentioned and as Bobby has mentioned to me, 51 and 52 are a 2-part story, 53 and 54 are a 2-part story, and then 55 is a standalone, and then 56 starts the next arc. So we're going to do an episode for 51 and 52, and then another one for 53 and 54. So that's how that's going to work. At some point, probably when we get to the issue 50 review, I will be reading the solicits for 51 through 53 or whatever solicits I have information on. So that's what's going to be happening in the pull bag. That will be leading up to our Dark Side December, where Ryan Drost from Star Joe's and I are going to be talking some Star Wars comics for December this year. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
I don't think so, except that I'm going to probably try to invite Tom to Grand Rapids Comic-Con so we can hang out with Kevin and I can get a bunch of books signed.
Yeah, that's purely not self-indulgent at all.
No,
folks.
but hey, if I got those connections, I might as well use them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I'll take pictures.
All right, folks. I guess Cowabunga says it all, right?
Yep. Or Booyakasha, depends on when you
No. I don't mind Booyakasha, but I'm glad that I've seen, I think, through the end of season 3, and I like how after there was the Meet Mondo Gecko episode in the Nick series. I like after that Mikey has started using both Booyakasha and Cowabunga. So very cool, very cool. All right, make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next time.
I have always liked Cowabunga. Huh? Cowabunga! I made a buddy.
On the half shell, they're the heroes for. In this day and age, who could ask for more?